In Mark chapter 6, Jesus' apostles had returned from being sent out by him to preach and to heal and to cast out demons, and they were sharing just all the amazing things that God had done as they had gone out to serve. And Jesus gives them a wonderful invitation to come to a desolate place with them and rest. And then this happens. In Mark chapter 6 and verse 33, now many saw them going and recognized them. And they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven. And he said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. If I were one of Jesus' apostles, I can't lie, I would have been so annoyed by what happened at the beginning of this story. They had worked so hard. They had poured themselves out, and they were so excited to accept Jesus' invitation to go get some time away. They hadn't even had time to eat. So they were just going to go with Jesus and have a picnic and just enjoy being together in a quiet place. And they couldn't even do that because these people ran and beat them to the desolate place they were going. That's how I would have seen it. But let's know Jesus. How did Jesus see it? Jesus saw it with compassion. He saw people that were harassed, hurting, sheep in need of a shepherd. That's how Jesus sees us. And there's going to be times where we're annoyed. There's going to be times where we're frustrated. There's going to be times where it feels like people always are wanting something more from us. But Jesus gives us an example of changing how we see them, to not see them through the lens of indignation and resentment, but to see them as hurting people, people in need of compassion. But there's also something tremendous about how Jesus acts on that compassion, of how Jesus responds to their great need, because you can detect the irritation in his apostles as he says, "All right, can we send them away so that they can go eat, and now we'll go eat?" And Jesus says, "No, you give them something to eat," which sounds ridiculous, as we find out by the end of the story that there's 5,000 guys there. These men would say, "We'd have to spend 200 days' wages, as much money as they would make from working for 200 days straight is what it would cost to buy enough just bread for all of these people. How could they possibly take care of them all?" But Jesus says something critically important. He tells them to go and see what they already had. It didn't look like much. All they had amongst them was 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Out of that whole great crowd, that was all the food that was already there. But they brought it to Jesus. And Jesus looked up. Jesus relied on God to take what they had, however little, how insignificant it might seem, and make it into something that could make a difference. And it did. These people that had ran to a desolate place and beat Jesus and his apostles there ate and were satisfied from how Jesus was able to provide through just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's what Jesus was able to do. Not only did they eat and were satisfied, but there were 12 baskets full of leftovers because of that little amount that Jesus had then taken. And there's an opportunity in that for us too. When we're feeling those tugs, don't focus on what you don't have. Look for what you do. Look amongst a larger group for what God has already provided, and then work together. Look to see what is there. Go and see. And then use that, however small it might seem, however insignificant it might seem in our eyes, and look up to God and ask his blessing on it and trust him to provide. Because he knows our limitations. He knows our weaknesses. He knows that we get tired, that we get hungry, but he provides. He will bless, and he can make so much more of our efforts when we work together and bring it all to him. Maybe you've been at a place where you feel like you're running on empty. Maybe you've been at a place where you give and you give and you give, and it feels like there's always somebody wanting more. But as you come to know Jesus, as we see him in this passage, accept his challenge, his example, his encouragement, to see those people around you with all of their demands as people that are hurting, as people that need compassion. And then accept his example, his challenge, his encouragement to go and see. See what God has provided. Don't take it upon yourself to be the one solely responsible for fixing all this, because that would be impossible. With 200 days' effort, you couldn't do everything that's expected of you. But look for what God has provided and bring it to him. Pray over it, ask his blessing on it, and see how he can provide in such a way that those needs are truly satisfied. Because as we follow Jesus in that, not only will those needs that we see all around us be met, our own needs will too. And Jesus will make us full.